1 year ago today, I inflicted psychic damage upon the Ice and Fire community by shining a spotlight on one of the most well-hidden secrets in Gurm's story.
Tyrek Lannister is a horse.
Tyrek Lannister? No, I can't do it.
For the uninitiated, Tyrek Lannister, the adolescent nephew of Tywin who gets married to a baby because of feudalism reasons, goes missing during the riot of King's Landing. Adam Marbrand, who became commander of the Goldcloaks, later tells Jaime that Tyrek was last seen a horse when the press of the mob broke the line of the Goldcloaks, hiding in plain sight the fact that rather than someone kidnapping him or him running away from the constant nagging of his literal baby bride to embrace an idyllic life in the countryside, what really happened to Tyrek Lannister is that he simply transformed into a horse during the riot, and somehow a member of the City Watch saw this and reported it to his superiors. Case closed. And though I have been constantly haunted by this theory since then, people stopping me on the street to ask me who else might be a horse, my friends trying to convert me to flat horse theory, some other nerds trying to make me look stupid by claiming he's a centaur, ludicrous, and a ghostly shiver down my spine every time someone mentions the kid on Reddit. I should probably clear up that this genius observation was not initially mine, in case anyone thought that. The earliest source I can find for it is this Tumblr post by Louis at Renly's Rainbow Guard in February of 2020, and it was brought to my attention by some Tumblr girl I know. Adam Marbrand also tells Jaime that while Tyrek himself wasn't found, they did find his horse. You idiot, that was him! So while the little Lannister is now presumably living out a simple life as a reliable palfrey in the Red Keep stables, that does leave an unanswered question hanging over my channel like the sword of Damocles, an analogy I didn't think through all that well. If Tyrek Lannister was a horse, well, who else might be a horse? Is what that question is. And now I'm going to do a video about how one might explore that question, and you're about to watch that video, and I'm about to segue into a sponsorship, and I'm just kidding, the only thing I'm selling you today is the truth. Chapter 1. That time I completely bamboozled Alt-Swift X. We might as well start by discussing my award-winning, genre-defining video from last April Fool's. Why do I only talk about horses on April Fool's? Anyway, in that video, which I titled Fake Asswife Theory, I, little shitter that I am, tasked some guys I know with picking the odd one out of a lineup of A Song of Ice and Fire fan theories. You know, 3 of these are real ones I found on Reddit or whatever, but one of them I just made up. The horse round was the trick question. My intention was that it was like a bluff, as Swifty says in the video. It's so obvious that this is the trick question, so it can't possibly be. But he says that because he thinks all the theories are fake, with the hilarious twist being that all of them are real theories.
Oh my god.
In the end, his limited imagination leads to him choosing the Tyrek theory as fake, and of the 4 contestants, only the spooky ghost one correctly calls my bluff. Sorta.
They're all fake.
I gave him the point anyway.
Yay, I got it!
But the theories aren't fake, they're all real, and we're about to talk about them. We already covered Tyrek, so let's just climb back up that list. Sandor Clegane. In the 3rd book, Arya notices that the Hound sleeps in Stranger's saddle, even while they're moving. What's more is that Stranger is able to just go the right way down these random-ass tracks and trails without Sandor leading him. In that scene where Arya tries to kill him with a big rock, Sandor wakes up just before she gets to him. Maybe this is because he was actually skin-changing Stranger and saw her sneaking up on him. Sandor and his steed have a special bond in any case. Stranger hates everyone else, but is a complete sweetie with Sandor, and when Arya leaves the Hound for dead, Stranger sticks by his dying master where most horses would just wander off. And maybe the whole gravedigger thing is off. Sandor is at the Quiet Isle, but no longer a grotesque man, he lives a second life in his gallant stallion. The Hound is a horse. If anyone would understand him, it's Arya. Her face is a horse's face, after all. Lyanna Stark. Okay, this one's pretty straightforward. The Starks have a deep history of skin changing, and the common consensus has it that Lyanna was the Knight of the Laughing Tree at the Harrenhal tourney, who rode extraordinarily well. There's a bit more to it, but the theory goes that Lyanna skin changed her steed, allowing her to, do that. In some sense, becoming a horse. Lyanna Stark is a horse. Or, as Roose Bolton tells Theon, she's at least half a horse. That is to say, Lyanna Stark is a centaur. Khal Drogo. Noted horsebro Drogo falls gravely ill because he ignored the advice of the most qualified physician for thousands of miles. Said physician, Miri Maz-Dur, does some freaky weirdo magic shit, after which Drogo is almost as responsive as me dad after his third wine. Dany's a normie and assumes that Miri did something to Drogo to make him like this as revenge for all the he and his fellow horse bros did. This is definitely the case in the show, but in the book, Miri is a bit more interesting. A bunch of people, foremost amongst whom being me, believe that Miri didn't actually intend on killing Drogo here. I've got old videos about this and it gets sorta complicated, but suffice to say that for reasons, Miri actually used Drogo's horse in her ritual to sustain Drogo's life, using blood magic to transfer the horse's soul? Life into Drogo's body. There's a horse's mind in Drogo's body. Khal Drogo is a horse. Now, there's an argument to be made that because I did craft this theory in 2018, that technically it qualifies as a fake theory for the purposes of that video, because I made it up. Now, this may sound like a solid point, however, shut up. And that's all the horse people from that video, but we've barely even scratched the surface. George has been sneaking horses under our collective nose this whole time. We've fixated on Tyrek because it answers the ongoing mystery of what happened to him, but that's missing the whole forest for just one tree. It's time to descend. The fucking ice and fire horseberg. Ice horse. Chapter 2. Oh my god, they're everywhere. Tyrek Lannister's mother is one Darlessa Marbrand, who may be a close relative of Commander Adam Marbrand. It's unclear, they could be siblings, or they could be distant cousins. Regardless, Tytos Lannister married Jane Marbrand, so Adam and Tyrek are like second cousins n times removed or something. The reason I bring this up is that it seems the ability to transform into a horse has some connection to Marbrand blood, as in that same chapter, Commander Adam apparently has great discomfort when not a horse. You have my word on it. Marbrand seemed visibly relieved to be a horse again, wearing the smoke-grey cloak of his own house instead of the gold wool of the City Watch. The Marbrands of Ashmark have seemingly no associations with horses beyond this, which I guess is just George being secretive about the connection. But both Tyrek and Adam's horse moments are mentioned in the same chapter, so he did leave us some clues. Anyway, did you know that Ned is a horse? Eddard Stark rode through the lowering bronze doors of the Red Keep, sore, tired, hungry, and irritable. He was still a horse, dreaming of a long hot soak, a roast fowl, and a feather bed, when the king's steward told him that Grand Maester Pycelle had convened an urgent meeting of the small council. He was still a horse. It's unclear when exactly Ned became a horse, but this is just as he and the girls arrive in King's Landing, so maybe he was a horse for the journey from Darry onwards. Given what we know about Ned's sister Lyanna, it only seems fitting that he too can be a horse. It even makes double sense because we know that Ned is a very honourable man, and we also know that honour is a horse. Strangely, the next sentence mentions that Ned dismounted, so I'm not sure what that's about. Was he riding another horse? Sticking with the Starks, after Catelyn leaves Winterfell, Robb tearfully says to Bran, "Mother will be home soon. Maybe we can ride out to meet her when she comes. Wouldn't that surprise her? To see you, a horse?" Strange way of phrasing it, but what Robb means here is that he thinks Catelyn would enjoy it if she saw Bran assume horse form like his father. I don't know if she'd find it that novel though, considering that her travelling companion Sir Roderick is also a horse. Sir Roderick Castle was already a horse, a long sword in hand. The already here indicates that the narrator, Tyrion, initially underestimated how quickly Sir Roderick could become a horse, as though he were expecting it to take longer. Frankly, I'm more impressed by how he's holding a sword with one of his hooves. And Roderick isn't the only horse Tyrion misjudges. Bronn, as it so happens, is a horse. Bronn came trotting out of the mists, already armoured and a horse, wearing his battered half-helm. I mean, the passage even says that Bronn was trotting. I can't believe we missed this for 27 years. Please do submit fan art of Horse Bronn wearing rushedly assembled armor and a beaten up helmet. It seems that hanging out with Bronn so much has rubbed off on Tyrion a bit, as in the next book, the half-man himself is sometimes a horse. The cloak was absurdly long, made for a man twice his height. When he was not a horse, the only way to wear the thing was to wrap it around him several times, which made him look a ball of striped fur. It sounds pretty cute, if I'm honest. Ultimately, however, Tyrion has a mixed opinion on horse people, seeing as he kills his father when he asks him where his first wife Tysha ended up, and Tywin responds, "Wherever horse go." Oh, and I guess Robb's plan to surprise Cat with Horsebran is even more unimpressive, given that Catelyn herself is a horse. Renly laughed. You must forgive Lady Catelyn Stannis. She's come all the way down from Riverrun, a long way a horse. When she first arrives at Bitterbridge, Catelyn sees many knights at the melee all being the same horse. Fewer than a score of knights remained a horse, charging and slashing at each other as watchers and fallen combatants cheered them on. From the sounds of it, there were many more knights who were this horse, but this late into the combat, most of them are no longer the horse. And later, in the aftermath of Renly's death, Catelyn transforms into the same horse as her travelling party. "Leave them! We must be well away before they think to look for us. We were both with the king when he was killed. This will not be forgotten." Wordless, Brienne turned and did as she was bid. "Ride," Catelyn commanded her escort when they were all a horse. "If any man tries to stop us, cut him down." And Cat's escort is apparently 20 of Robb's best and 5 lordlings as well, so that must be one big horse. Lest you think she's left out of the fun, don't forget that Brienne is also a horse. Jaime's gelding lumbered off ponderously, blowing and snorting in pain. He craned around to look for Brienne. She was still a horse, an arrow lodged in her back and another in her leg, but she seemed not to feel them. When thinking about Renly's death, Stannis wishes he was a horse. "I was still abed when he died, your Devon will tell you. He tried to wake me. Dawn was nigh and my lords were waiting, fretting. I should have been a horse, armoured." Additionally, he also voices regret about being abed, or maybe Abed. The text is unclear.
So, Abed, what happens in season 7?
I don't know how likely season 7 is. I mean, what show ever peaked after season 6?
So maybe this is Stannis voicing some envy of the Starks for their equine powers. And it makes sense that Stannis would be jealous of the Starks for this. As Renly postulates, Stannis very well could be a ham. Refocusing our gaze northwards, Night's Watchman Gren is a horse. But it was Tywin who emerged from the greenery, forking a shaggy grey Garen with Gren, a horse, beside him. The Lord of Bones, Rattleshirt, is also a horse, sometimes. "Got him!" That was Rattleshirt, still a horse. In fact, lots of wildlings are a horse. Or the day is a horse? It's unclear. That first night, after a long day, a horse. They made camp in a shallow stone bowl atop a nameless mountain. Additionally, Jon Snow laments that Ygritte has too many halves, as at separate times she claims to be half fish, half goat, and half horse. I asked a team of artists to make an impression of what Ygritte might look like accurate to this description. Here are the results. No wonder he fell for her. Jon Snow himself gives horse being a shot, but it seems he struggles to maintain the form in his wounded state. He had to reach the wall before the Magnar. It was hard enough to stay a horse while awake. His wounded leg grew ever more painful. Famously, Wyman Manderley cannot be a horse. He is too fat. Men of the Brotherhood are a horse. "I saw the mountain slay Raymond Darry with a single blow so terrible that it took Darry's arm off at the elbow and killed the horse beneath him too." Side note, the identity of Darry's horse is also unclear. "Gladden Wild died there with him, and Lord Mallory was ridden down and drowned. We had lions on every side, and I thought I was doomed with the rest, but Alan shouted commands and restored order to our ranks, and those still a horse rallied around Thoros and cut our way free." The Stormcrows and Second Sons are a horse. Dany considered. The slaver host seemed small compared to her own numbers, but the sellswords were a horse. Oberyn's daughter Nymeria Sand is a horse. Even a horse, the Lady Nym looked graceful, dressed all in shimmering lilac robes and a great silk cape of cream and copper that lifted at every gust of wind and made her look as though she might take flight. The Windblown and the Company of the Cat are somehow one presumably enormous horse. If not for their allies and their despised hirelings, they might well have been overwhelmed, but the Windblown and the Company of the Cat were a horse in minutes. Feast your ears on the next passage. Iri and Jeekwe followed a horse, with Aggo and Racharo, then Reznak in an ornate sedan chair with an awning to keep the sun off his head. Now, it's unclear whether this means Iri and Jeekwe followed a horse, implying that the two Dothraki handmaids are a horse, or Iri and Jeekwe followed a horse, which would be referring to the character in front of them in the procession, which is Strong Belwas. This seems less likely though, given that Strong Belwas doesn't even like horses. And that's every relevant usage of the secret coded word a horse across the series that I could find. But George just couldn't help himself. Even in the supplementary material, he still tells us about his hidden horses. Chapter 3. What do you fucking mean there's more? In The Hedge Knight, Dunk observes a horsey half dozen in the lists. Elsewhere on the field, the 6 knights who had remained a horse were riding their third course. In the World Book, a sidebar mentions that Northmen for some reason are fighting a horse. As knighthood is rare in the North, the knightly tourney and its pageantry and chivalry are as rare as hen's teeth beyond the neck. Northmen fight a horse with war lances but seldom tilt for sport, preferring melees that are only just this side of battles. So they're fighting the horse for fun? Yandel also tells us that one historic king of the Riverlands, Theo Teague, was a horse for his entire reign. It is said, however, that neither King Torrance nor his heirs ever sat securely on their thrones. The Teagues were so little loved by those they ruled that they were forced to keep the sons and daughters of all the great houses of the Trident at their court as hostages in case of treason. Even so, the 4th Teague monarch, King Theo the Saddle-Sore, spent his entire reign a horse, leading his knights from one rebellion to the next while hanging hostages from every tree. Some of the wedding guests at Rhaena and Aegon's wedding are a horse. Some others are afoot too. Weird. On the day of the wedding, the streets outside the Sept of Remembrance were lined with warriors' sons in gleaming silver armor, scowling at the wedding guests as they passed by, afoot, a horse, or in litters. The many challengers at the tourney to celebrate the Dragon Pit's completion are also a horse. Whether they constitute the one horse or are each their own horse is left as an exercise to the reader. 77 knights took part in 11 teams. The competitors began a horse. Light spoilers for House of the Dragon for this little bit, like as of yet unaired material. Little did Lord Lefford suspect that he would soon face a stiffer test, for an army of fresh foes was descending on them from the north. 2,000 savage Northmen flying Queen Rhaenyra's quartered banners. At their head rode the Lord of Barrowton, Roderick Dustin, a warrior so old and hoary men called him Roddy the Ruin. His host was made up of grizzled greybeards in old mail and ragged skins, every man a seasoned warrior, every man a horse. They called themselves the Winter Wolves. And in the last battle of the dance, we find out that Boros Baratheon was a horse. Lord Boros himself was still a horse in the middle of the carnage. Chapter 4. Other animals exist. As for the centaur thing, look, there's a secret tunnel to Shatia's brothel that Varys tells Tyrion was made by a previous hand of the king who wanted to get his fuck on, but wouldn't go in through the traditional entrance. Hey, not like that. Quit it. Anyway, this was probably Tywin, who we know was into hooers, but had personal hang-ups about inheriting his father's vices. What a little bitch. The reason I bring this up is that the tunnel emerges in a stable. Why would Tywin need a tunnel from the stables? It's because there's a massive Lannister centaur conspiracy. You know, Rob's plan to impress Cat with Bran being a horse kind of falls apart when you realize that Bran is a squirrel, and so is Arya, and Luwin is their father. Additionally, as fellow YouTubist Quinn the Goom pointed out, Maester Cresson is a bird of some kind. The old man had been with Stannis so long, until he ran afoul of Melisandre, and died for it. Now, fowl is spelt strangely here, as though it's actually in reference to a completely different word altogether, but let's just assume that it's a publishing error and power on through. Rather than just any old bird, fowl specifically refers to members of the orders Galliformes or Anseriformes. So while Crescent definitely isn't a secret parrot or emu or albatross, he could be a chook or a quail or a turkey or like a pheasant. Those are all Galliforms. Gallus being the Latin for bukkak, formes being the Latin for like, you know, it's the suffix used in taxonomy for saying, hey, these are all the things that are sort of like the thing we're talking about. Like the suborders of Carnivora are Caniformia, the dog-like carnivores, and Feliformia, the cat-like carnivores. Wait, maybe Melisandre is the bird. And Seriformes, then, are all the things that are sort of like geese. So it's a lot. Like, Crescent isn't a raven, unfortunately, or a penguin, or I'm just naming different birds at this point. But it could be a swan, or a duck, or a goose, or a different duck, or a Stella's eider, or there are so many different ducks. You know the ducks at the pond are free? You can just take them. The government doesn't want you to know this. I have so many ducks at home. Anyway, thanks for watching Taxonomy Review. See you tomorrow. What a stupid fucking video.